Ladies and gentlemen, playoff weekend is here. The Bengals and the Ravens set to showdown in prime time in just over 48 hours from the taping of this podcast. The excitement is real in Cincinnati. Welcome into another postseason preview edition of the Strictly Stripes podcast. Muhammad Ahmad joined once again with the whole crew, Mike Neislick and Andrew Gillis. And just because Andrew's back on, I'm going to say this because I love him. This weekend is going to be a shabanger. You like that, Andrew? Shabanger. It's going to be a shabanger this weekend.
It's not a word.
Have I gotten to you yet, or are you already tired of me?
Let's use words. Let's use words that exist.
Hey, it's the playoffs, man. You got to have fun. Everyone's having fun. The mood is jovial and festive all around, not just Cincinnati, but the NFL, man. I mean, this is the best time of the year. January and going into February, man. You can't ask for more, but like we've talked about all week, all the different storylines, the Bengals' right side of the offensive line, Baltimore's defense, them having the third best rushing defense in the league, among many other things. Joe Burrow being Mr. Football in January and February. Well, he's always Mr. Football, but especially this time of year. But just jumping into it, guys, I mean, we've really kind of talked about how close this game might be. We've talked about, are the Bengals going to blow the Ravens out of the water? What are your all's predictions? Just jumping right into the water with this one. Who wants to go first?
Well, it might go
Help
first.
you into the water?
I guess, I don't know, the water, the sea, like jump into whatever you want. Like jump into the
Ohio.
I don't know. When you go to those you go to those indoor places with all those balls where you just jump in and it's like a bunch of balls that you dive into.
The ball pit?
The ball pit, yeah. Is that what it's called? It's been a while since I've been to
water.
one. It's something. It's substance. Whatever substance you want to call it. You want to jump into the substance, Mike?
28-10. Bengals. We'll hit the under, and we'll go with the them covering just the quarterback situation, the offense in dire straits in Baltimore. I mean, they might be a little. They'll have more personnel, but I just don't think they have the offensive firepower here. I think the Bengals roll. I think this would have been a dangerous game if Lamar Jackson. I said this, I think, earlier this week. If Lamar Jackson was healthy, I think this would be one where you maybe worry about a little bit. But right now, I don't see how this game is close.
Muhammad, you or me?
Let's be like Joe Mixon and flip a coin. You have a coin on you? Let's just flip a coin and decide. If not, I'll just go ahead.
I flipped it. You go.
All right, there you go.
Shove him into the sand.
All right. Not too much of the margin of what Mike predicted. I'd say somewhat close. I'm going to say it's 24-10 Bengals. I mean, you really got to start with the quarterback situation. If you look at the injury report for both teams, obviously no Lamar Jackson. Tyler Huntley is questionable with that right shoulder and his wrist. We mentioned he's got some tendonitis in his shoulder. So John Harbaugh said it's going to be a game time decision for him. But even then, like we talked about with Paul Daner and like I talked about with you, Mike, I understand the Ravens will kind of drag you into the mud, and that's why I think it'll be at least a 2-touchdown game, maybe not much more or less than that. But, yeah, you're not really going to get much from Tyler Huntley, especially if – I mean, he is going to play, I would think, even if he's not completely 100%, because I think we all saw what Anthony Brown did, and I don't think either – I think the Bengals would love to face Anthony Brown. I think they would enjoy it, but I know the Ravens don't want to have to deal with that, so – really not much firepower from their offense. They really don't even have their best receivers, Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay. I mean, I will say if you had Huntley and you had those two guys, maybe, a hard maybe there's a chance, but you don't even have them. I think with Mark Andrews, we talked about him a lot in the beginning of the week. I do think he's one of the better players in the league, especially at his position, but even without Chidobe Awuzie, the Bengals secondary's played a lot better. No one's really a rookie at this time of year, but even for Cam Taylor-Britt, he really has looked like more than just a rookie, especially with Trey Flowers in the nickel. I think they're going to use him a lot, and he's going to match up well against Andrews. And then, yeah, like I said, we've talked about the concerns with the Bengals' offensive right side of the offensive line, but, just let Joe Burrow cook. Even if you don't really get what you want out of Joe Mixon, although I think he needs to be more efficient than he's been the last 3 games, and that includes Samaje Perine. I think no matter what happens with that, you let Joe Burrow cook, and he serves a nice, tasty dish of I don't know. I'm trying to think of like an analogy here. A nice dish of just steak burro. If you guys go to Jeff Ruby, they have what's called the steak burro, and it's named after him. And I think he's gonna cook up a nice steak burro for all those fans who are gonna be hopefully happy with a win. So yeah, I think it's gonna be Bengals 24, Ravens 10, and yeah, how about some steak burros on the house? How about you, Andrew?
This game has been weird to kind of think about all week because what can you take away from their Week 5 game? What can you take away from their Week 18 game? I don't think anything. The Bengals were not really playing that well in Week 5. The Ravens were playing really well. In Week 18, we saw the Ravens kind of pull the chute. And, still the Bengals didn't really play that well in Week 18. It was just pretty weird to try and get a grip. Shout out to Jay Morrison of The Athletic for digging this up, but only one time in history has a team ever played another team 3 times in a season and started 3 different quarterbacks in those games. That was the 1990 Washington Redskins. Shout out to Jay for bringing that up.
I was just about to shout him out.
This is a pretty unique scenario here. But I think the Ravens are going to do a pretty good job of kind of slowing the game down. If this turns into a track meet, the Bengals, I think, are going to run away with it. So I think the Ravens are going to do a really good job with that. I really like their secondary. The Bengals offensive line concerns me. And that is why I am going to take the Ravens 23-20 over the Bengals. I think the Bengals are going to get upset.
Wow!
I've had a funky feeling about this one all week.
Wow!
I think the Ravens are going to be able to run the ball. I think that this is a game that the Ravens are going to enter kind of with their hair on fire a little bit. I don't think they appreciate the talk that the Bengals had kind of given in the last couple of days. The allegations of dirty play and stuff like that. I think that kind of is going to sit in their craw. This is a game for me. If you're the Ravens, you've got to steal a possession or two. So if the Bengals have to be on the lookout for fake punts, for if being aggressive on 4th downs, things like that. The Ravens are pretty aggressive on 4th downs just in general. But this is a game where the Ravens have to steal some possessions. And I think all it's going to take is 1 or 2 Joe Burrow picks. That right side of the line scares me. So I think the Ravens are going to win. I'm going to pick them 23-20. We'll see. Maybe I look like an idiot on Sunday at like 11 o'clock, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Mike is just nodding his head as you say that.
Yeah.
Mike is nodding his head. I want to hear Mike's take on this before I get into it.
Well, obviously I disagree. I had the Bengals winning in
by 18.
No, as bad as the offensive line could be, I just don't see it. I don't see a way it happens.
And here's the thing, too, Andrew, I hear what you're saying about J.K. Dobbins. I don't want to be a hypocrite because I don't know if I told you or Mike this when I talked to each of you this week on the podcast. I do think it's a big deal that they're going to have him out of all the injuries the Ravens have. But what could J.K. Dobbins do to pull off an upset? Let's be real. I've said it before. Tyler Huntley reminds me more of Malik Willis, not Lamar Jackson. I don't expect anything out of Tyler Huntley. I feel mean for saying this, but it's true.
Again, one of the things that kind of led me to this was I think the Ravens' defense is better. The Ravens have a better secondary.
Whoa! I got to stop you there. They have a better secondary? The Ravens do?
Yes, absolutely. Without a debate, they have a better secondary than the Bengals
do. Okay. What if you have Chidobe Awuzie? Go ahead.
Yeah, the Ravens are still better even with Cheeto. The Ravens have a better secondary, and they have a better kicker. And I think you really can't. I think this game is going to be really close. And in a game like that,
the kicker, they have a second string.
Well, that's objectively true.
Yes, I understand. I understand. And we'll get into this with my prop bet. But I think the Ravens kind of have the chops to stay with them. And if you're afraid of that right side of the offensive line, which I think we all can agree that the right side of the offensive line is going to be a major question mark going in. And if I'm the Ravens, they're not stupid. They're going to test that right side. And if that right side starts to collapse, we saw it last week. The Ravens got after Burrow a little bit. If that right side goes in, you get 1, maybe 2 ill-timed throws. And that's what flips a game in the playoffs. So, I mean, these two teams know each other really well. I think Sunday's game in week 18 was closer than maybe it let on. The beginning was really bad, but since from the final 45, 50 minutes of that game, I thought it was pretty even. I thought the Ravens actually played pretty well down some key guys. So I've got a weird feeling about this one. I can't explain it. It's just a feeling I have in my gut.
Well, let me provide a rebuttal to your interesting gut feeling there, because my gut feeling tells me you're crazy if you think the Ravens secondary is better than the Bengals, even with Chidobe Awuzie. Like, I'm amazed you would actually say that.
Yeah,
look, are they terrible?
Marlon Humphrey's really good, and they have.
He's not great though.
No, he's really good. Marcus Peters has lost a step since his ACL, obviously. But their safeties are really good. Marcus Williams is really good. Chuck Clark is really underrated. Kyle Hamilton was a first-round pick. I think he's gotten better and better as the season's gone along. So their secondary is very, very good.
I'm iffy about Marcus Peters. I don't think he's bad. I didn't even mention
Roquan Smith, by the way.
Well, we're talking about secondary. I'm not linebackers are different. We're talking about secondary.
I think that what that allows the secondary to do is it allows them to play more freely, because the Ravens don't have to blitz they don't have to blitz 7. They can get home with 4 or 5, and I think that their secondary can hold up.
But at the same time, let's talk about just the safeties. If we want to break this down further, you said it's Chuck Clark, and who's the other safety? I know the names, but who's specifically the other safety? Marcus Williams. That's right. Okay, I forgot if he was a corner or safety, because I have seen him play. He
broke his wrist. I think it might have actually been that Bengals game.
I think that's why I had it confused for a second.
He missed 3 months or 2 months or whatever it was. He was out there for a while, or out of the lineup for a while there.
I can't speak for Williams too much because I haven't seen him as much, but Chuck Clark, look, he's gotten better.
He's good. I don't think he's top of the league or anything like that. He's good, but I don't think.
But at the same time,
not great.
Okay, and I don't think Von Bell or Jesse Bates are elite either. I'll be fair there, but I think if you just do I don't know how you want to scale this, but they're just better. Jesse Bates has great range. I've been watching him since he was a rookie. He's had the same range he's had since he came to Cincinnati. And I mean, with Von Bell, ask him to do anything. Get to the quarterback, no problem. Really should have had a sack on Mac Jones. That wasn't a sack against the Patriots. Forced a game-winning fumble, no problem. Get picks, no problem. Recover fumbles, no problem. He can do anything. Again, I don't know that Chuck Clark is that versatile. Can you ask him to do all the things that Von Bell does?
Yes,
I don't know, man.
Yeah, absolutely. They've
played him on Sunday.
They've played him at linebacker. They've played him at safety. They've played him in the slot. They've played him all over. Chuck Clark is really, really versatile. And by the way, just as an FYI, Ravens had 14 interceptions this year. Bengals had 13. The turnover differential was +4 for the Ravens, +6 for the Bengals. And then in terms of takeaways on fumbles, Bengals had 11 takeaways. Ravens had 11. So it's actually really
it's almost even. I mean, it basically is even in some ways, or it's just about even. So there's a debate to be had because it's not lopsided. So say that again, Mike.
It's even in some ways, but in others it's not, because it's not even.
Exactly. There's never going to be a utopia situation in life, but in this case, there's lots of debates to be had, and we'll have to definitely talk about this on our post-game pod on Sunday, because I'm going to definitely just think about what we talked about and compare how Chuck Clark does to either Jesse Bates or Von Bell on Sunday. So don't worry, Andrew, I'll keep this in the back of my head. I'm not going to forget, but I want to go back to the right side of the offensive line, because I know people are probably sick and tired of hearing about Max Sharping and Hakeem Adeniji and Lyle Collins and Alex Cappa being hurt. But here's the thing, though, Andrew, you got to understand this. I'm not saying this is an ideal situation, and I hope for Joe Burrow's sanity and his physical health it doesn't happen to him, but he was sacked 9 times against the Titans. 9 times! And that was and it still is a way better pass rush. The Titans is a better pass rush. He got sacked that many times and they won. I don't think he'll be sacked anywhere near that much, and we can probably debate that, but even if he gets beat up, do you really think he's not going to get back up and show why he's the many nicknames that he is, including Joe Shiesty?
I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily like a fair question, because obviously he got up against Tennessee and they won the game, but like Tennessee had a chance to win that game late.
But they didn't. But they didn't. That's the point.
But doesn't it scare you that you're looking at this offensive line headed into the playoffs and it resembles a little bit more of the offensive line that they had last year in the playoffs?
No, I actually disagree. It only half resembles them because what? Like, okay, let's look at last year's line.
Jonah Williams and Hakeem Adeniji both started. So those are your tackles. You've got Cordell
Trey Hopkins you have Trey Hopkins at center. He's not in the league anymore.
You replace, and then so you lose Kappa, which is a big loss. You have Max Sharping, then you have Karras. So like you have Karras replaces Hopkins. Adeniji slides out, but basically so Sharping takes Prince's place. Then you got Volson at left guard. You got Jonah.
He replaced Quinton Spain, who's not in the league anymore either.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying that their offensive line is the same. I think it's better than it was last year.
Sure, that's the point.
I would have concerns. I do have concerns about what that offensive line is going to look like. So
we all have concerns. I think even the Bengals have concerns, but I don't think they're concerned about losing exclusively because of two guys being out. And believe me, it's a big deal. Like, I'm not downplaying this. We all have concerns, like I said, but this is still better than last year's offensive line, and they still got to the Super Bowl. And I get it. Like, they played close games against all their opponents, including the Rams in the Super Bowl, but you win the game. You play to win the game. My inner Herm Edwards is just coming out right now because at the end of the day, a win is a win. But you know what? Like Joe Burrow says, it's do or die in the playoffs. Right, Mike? Yeah, I mean, I have to hear your take on this. Like, I know you're sitting listening to a squabble. I mean, what do you make out of all this? Is how crazy is Andrew, or am I the crazy one? Who's crazy, basically, or are we all crazy?
Well, I mean, I think the Bengals are more talented almost across the board in terms of just, especially on offense. They're the healthier team. And, I mean, with Lamar Jackson in the lineup on the road, they lost by 2. Probably should have won that game. And now they're facing a backup quarterback that is injured. So, in front of a crowd that I think is going to be really amped up for the game. And I don't see it. I mean, I think, you don't overlook an opponent, but I think this is a veteran tested group that's not going to do that. So I just don't see that, like I said, the Ravens can keep up blow for blow, even if Joe Burrow stumbles and turns it over a couple times or something like that. I still think the Bengals would be favored. To be honest, I just think that they're going to be able to move the ball more consistently than a Ravens offense that over the last 5 weeks since Lamar Jackson has gone down hasn't scored against anybody, and those are some of the worst teams in the NFL they've faced.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and like I said, Andrew, I am really excited for Sunday's post-game pod because if me and Mike are right, I'm going to lead off the podcast with that. But I'm gonna do like a little coin flip here because everyone's talking about coin flips, not just Joe Mixon. But if somehow you are right, on Sunday, even if it's not the exact score you predict, but you're right in saying it's an upset, I'm gonna do something special for you on the podcast. I'll have to think about how I'm gonna reward you, but you're gonna get like a special kind of preferential treatment on Sunday. So I'll leave you with that. But the opposite is true if what you predict doesn't happen. But beyond that, well, speaking of predictions, which we could go on and on about, prop bets. I actually want to lead off with mine because this is gonna be a fun one. Okay, first of all, before I even say it, like, do you guys think I'm gonna do a passing prop or a rushing receiving prop? I just want to.
Well, neither, because you said it was fun.
No, it's one of the two. It's either a passing prop or a rushing receiving prop, but it's not one you would think of. So I want to see if you know where I'm getting at with this.
You've offered no hints.
I have no idea.
Let's hear it. Okay, I'm going to say Trenton Irwin gets over 5.5 receiving yards. Trenton Irwin. I'm showing Trenton Irwin some love because we've talked about Jamar Chase. We've talked about Tyler Boyd. We've talked about T. Higgins. And you can make props on them too. Don't get me wrong, but like I understand it's a very low line set for Irwin. I mean, he's the number 4 receiver in a very crowded and talented wide receiver room. But like, let's think about where this guy has come from, being on the practice squad, replacing Jamar Chase, and still having a role in this offense, even as he's come back. I mean, 5 yards is the least he's had in the game. He had 5 yards receiving against Tampa Bay, but he has not had less than that in a game this year. He had 45 receiving yards when he caught 2 touchdowns against New England. The most he's had in the game was 58 receiving yards when he had that flea flicker tutty against Cleveland, which I think was his best play of the year. Either that or the McCourty touchdown. Getting a touchdown over Devin McCourty, who's still one of the best at his craft, is a nice one. But yeah, I have to show some love here. We got to change it up, have some parity. And I'm going to say, yeah, Trenton Irwin, the long-haired Trenton Irwin, the California kid, the former commercial actor, shows out in prime time like he did as a kid, over 5.5 receiving yards.
So my prop bet kind of goes hand in hand with my prediction. I think Joe Burrow is going to go under. The over-under on his passing yards is actually 269.5 right now. I think he's going to go under. In the previous 2 games against the Ravens, in Week 5, he threw 35 passes, threw for 217 yards. In Week 18, he threw for 40. He threw 42 passes, threw for 215 yards. So he's kind of hovered, just over 200, right in that little, 200 and teens area against this team. And it's not really one of those situations where they didn't throw the ball a ton. I mean, he threw the ball 42 times last week and had 215 yards. Now, granted, missed some throws. Could have had, he missed T on an end zone hit, would have been like 30 yards, something like that. Threw the ball late on a Jamar throw that could have been a touchdown. Like, I understand that, but I think that, the Ravens kind of know what this game has to be for them to win. Like, the path of victory for the Ravens is much smaller than it is for the Bengals. If this game is, if the winning team of this game has 28 points, 31 points, the Bengals are going to win this one. But I think the Ravens are really going to put their, they're really going to put their emphasis on kind of killing the clock and making sure the ball does not go into Joe Burrow's hands. So, I could really see this as a low possession game. I kind of think of, maybe like an NCAA tournament game where you have a mid-major playing, a blue blood. Basically what you want to do, you want to drain the shot clock. You want to get efficient shots. I think that's kind of what the Ravens are going to do. So even if Joe Burrow has a really nice game, I think under 269.5 is good odds right now.
Yeah, I think I was going to go with Jamar Chase over. I get what is his line is. Just the standard one is 77.5, but
yeah, that's what I'm looking
at DraftKings you can do alternate, and you can get plus 155 at 100 plus yards. And I think he's going to have a big game. I think they'll connect on some of the plays that they didn't on Sunday, and obviously I feel like he's going to be extra motivated with some of the stuff that went on with Roquan Smith last week, and he tends to shine. Had obviously a real good run in the playoffs last year. So I do that to get some extra value. And then the other one I was looking at, in terms of Burrow, you can bet his pass attempts, and it's 36.5. And with the way that the Bengals have not been running the ball, I think the over is an easy, if you wanted to pad a parlay, that one might not be too bad.
I guess I don't think there's a prop bet for this, but like just out of pure just speculation, or actually let me see if there is one. No, there isn't. I was gonna see if there's like a over under on like total sacks, but like what's the line for how many times Joe Burrow gets sacked on Sunday? Like what would you set the line at if you had to predict?
Probably 2.5. 2.5 feels good. I think like I said, I mean the right side of the offensive line would that would scare me if I was a Bengals fan. So I think 2.5 is probably fair. How the Ravens got after the quarterback last week would be another kind of scary thing. I also really like, if we're just going to kind of go through some here, I really like J.K. Dobbins over 59.5 rushing yards. He obviously sat last week against the Bengals, but the 4 weeks before that, he had 120, 125, 59, and 93 yards. And his over-under right now is at 59.5. So Like I mentioned, I think the Ravens are going to, I mean, you have to establish the run. If you get into a game where it's Tyler Huntley versus Joe Burrow, I think that thing could crash and burn really quickly for Baltimore. So I think that they're going to kind of have to force the ball to J.K. Dobbins in creative ways, get him outside, kind of do some misdirection stuff, be aggressive on fourth down, which leads to more attempts. So I like J.K. Dobbins over 59.5 as well.
Yeah, it'll be close. That'll be a close one. I think he'll get just over that because I still do think Cincinnati's rushing defense is going to be really good now that they have their full defensive line together after, you had Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson banged up in December, but it'll be a good one too. Mike, what would you set the line at? 2.5 like Andrew said, or a little higher or lower?
Oh, for the sacks, yeah, about 2.5. I mean, that's what kind of they've when they've struggled, put over 3, but have been around 2 the last couple of weeks.
Do the Ravens get the over or under on that? 2.5.
Probably over, I would think.
I think over. I think they're going to end the game with
not the over, but
I think so. I think so too.
I think the Ravens are going to end up with like 3 or 4 sacks. I think they're going to. I mean, the way that the Ravens are going to win the game is not, I don't think, by sitting back for 4 quarters and kind of letting Joe Burrow have some time. I think you've got to get in his face, and they know that. So I think they're going to dial up some pressure and try and get after him, and just kind of say, "Damn the torpedoes."
I feel so bad saying this, knowing Hakeem Adeniji, and obviously Max Sharping is a veteran, but again, there's a reason why they paid all that money to get Alex Kappa and Lyle Collins as a part of that overhaul. So, man, that's going to be tough, and it's definitely going to be frustrating. But, they got to this point with those players playing the way they did, Kappa and Collins. So, I mean, they still got the most out of them. It's just they can't get much more, especially this time of the year. But who knows? We could be blown out of the water, and maybe somehow, some way, they have the cleanest, maybe not the cleanest, but cleaner protection than what we're predicting. But man, this is going to be fun. I was going to say, Andrew, you covered, just to kind of wrap up, I know you covered the Ravens like we've talked about on this podcast. I've never actually covered an NFL playoff game. This is my first ever playoff game I'll be covering. I was going to say, for you, you've covered multiple playoff games in Baltimore. I mean, how different is it covering a playoff game from a regular game? I mean, obviously, as reporters, we cover games like any other game, but what's the atmosphere like? What's the vibe like in the stadium just being there for you from your standpoint?
I mean, it's fun. People are certainly well served in terms of their alcohol consumption. I remember in 2019, the Ravens played the Titans. The Ravens had won 12 regular season games in a row, and they kind of rolled in, and the joint was really jumping. And then they played one of the sloppier games, truthfully, I've ever seen a team play. I mean, I think it was they were credited with 8 drops in one game. And the air gets sucked out of a building quickly in the playoffs because fans kind of know what's going on. I remember the Ravens were down 7-0 at the end of the first quarter. They had just gotten stopped on a 4th and inches, and on the first play, Ryan Tannehill threw a 50-yard touchdown pass. The Ravens went down 14-0, and you could feel everybody tense up. And I think people might not tense up as much if you're the Bengals. But I mean, again, this kind of I was talking about at the hop, you could convince me of a scenario where, the Ravens go up, it's different than trailing other teams, right? If the Ravens are up 10-3, 10-0, 13-7, 13-3, whatever it is, the game is farther along, and against a team like the Ravens, it gets late early. So I think that, the thing you've got to avoid is pressing, because the environment is intense. And if you don't want to be in a situation where you're down 13-7 and all of a sudden there's 6 minutes left in the second quarter and you're thinking we got to score now. You've got to approach it. If you're the Bengals, you've got to approach it pretty even keel, because Paycor Stadium is going to be very, very loud. And I'm excited to see the type of atmosphere that we're going to get kind of when we walk from that parking garage into the stadium.
Yeah, it reminds me of the intro they had for the Monday night game, which, obviously is going to be remembered for different reasons from what I'm about to say. But, the introduction they had for that pregame ceremony, it was almost like an Olympic ceremony, the way they had the lights, the way they had just everything coordinated. Yeah, it looked a lot like an Olympic introduction in some ways. So I'm really excited to see how they follow up with that with the wild card game. But Mike, I was going to say, I know this is your first year on an NFL beat, but have you ever covered an NFL playoff game? at any point when you were like freelancing, or have you been to an NFL playoff game before?
Not the NFL playoffs. No, I've covered a couple SEC championships, done a variety of other things, Major League playoffs, but not the NFL. Stanley Cup.
Have you never been to a playoff game as a fan either? Like growing up in Chicago?
No.
Did the Bears make the playoffs a lot in the 90s? I know you probably would have been young when they won the Super Bowl, but did they ever make it much in the 90s at all?
Not very often, no.
Yeah, kind of like the Bengals. That's why they earned the nickname. I'm not going to say on this podcast, but yeah, I'm sure people can relate to you on that point. But man, if that doesn't set the stage for Sunday, I don't know what does. I'm just as excited as everyone for this game. And make sure you tune into our post-game podcast on Sunday as we break down that game and what this means for the Bengals, either moving into the divisional round or potentially, according to Andrew and his prediction, maybe ending their season. We will find out on Sunday. That is to be determined. But once again, for myself, Andrew Gillis, and Mike Neislick, I'm Muhammad Ahmad. See you Sunday.